Good morning. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on this 18th day of March 2024. And I want to introduce the panelists here in studio. We have Nelson Koech, who's the Member of Parliament for Belgut constituency and Chairperson of the Defence Foreign Relations Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Kenyans.
Fred Okango is the Political Affairs Secretary within KANU. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
And Geoffrey Ruku is the Member of Parliament for Mbeere North constituency. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sam.
All right. And this morning, the reports had been that the President would be signing the Affordable Housing Bill 2023. That appears to have been pushed to tomorrow. We'll talk about that shortly. But also this morning on the two dailies, on the Daily Nation, matters that shook Kibaki's presidency. It is 15 years since that tense Thursday on March 5th, 2009, when human rights activists Oscar Kingara and Paul Olu were executed Mafia style around 6 p.m. on Nairobi State House Road. The killings, apart from drawing international condemnation, would split the Grand Coalition government of President Mwai Kibaki and Prime Minister Raila Odinga down the middle, but many questions still remain unanswered. Then that story of the housing levy set for return as Ruto has sent to bill today. 1.5% of employees' gross salary that will be deducted to go into the housing levy, and employers will also match this amount. On the Standard, it is KRA news titans on hustlers moved by KRA to expand the tax bracket has reached the small and micro businesses. Boda riders, merchants, matatu operators, among others, will now have to comply and pay up to or risk losing customers who need e-Teams receipts to file taxes. Quite a bit of conversation that have been going on the electronic tax invoicing management system, including what farmers have been complaining, says that they are now being targeted to pay taxes they have not been paying. There has been explanations that that is not the case, but we wait to hear clarification from the Kenya Revenue Authority. The chickens come home to roost for hustlers is on page 6 of the Standard. The e-Teams is available on basic phones and any business person will be required to download it. KRA has for ages attempted to tax the informal businesses to little success. All right, then you'll find that e-Teams, what is that? Kenyans in dark as Treasury pushes to expand tax bracket the more. But I wanted us to begin with a story that was in our bulletin. That is about what some agencies have written to Parliament. That is the Attorney General, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the EACC, as well as Transparency International. They are saying that they are opposed to the bill that seeks to amend the Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Act. And that amendment bill is drafted by Geoffrey Ruku. So they're opposing that because they're saying that it goes against the war against corruption, and that the country is also part of the international community, and there are certain laws that are supposed to be checking that. Why would you insist on going on with such a law?
Sam, there are 4 pieces of law which helps in tackling the corruption in the Republic of Kenya. One of them is the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crime Act of 2003, and it is important to know that that's the act which is pre-Constitution 2010, meaning that it is not properly aligned with the Constitution of 2010. There are quite a number of clauses which are not still well aligned with the Constitution. The other, the section I'm talking about, section 45 to A and B, mostly is tied with Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015, which has quite a number of sections on how to deal with all procurement, whether it is not following the procurement rules or the way the procurement should be conducted within the public sector. The other important piece of law is Public Procurement PPRA, Regulatory Authority, which is a piece of law which also look at how come up with an authority to make follow-up of each and every procurement happening in any state department or any public entity. The other important piece of law is Fair Administrative Act, that whatever you are doing within public institutions, fairness, and everybody should be given a fair chance to be listened to, whether it is employment, whether it is, whatever it is, Fair Administrative Act. The section, section 45, 2B and C, it negates a number of sections of PPRA or Fair Administrative Act, as well as Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. Why? So what because
sorry, let's be methodical. What are you trying to cure, especially when you are calling?
I'm trying to cure the fact that there are many cases which have been forwarded in the court of law. So many of them, high-profile cases, but all of them have been acquitted or withdrawn from the court.
Problem with acquittal? Because
it's because
the process of justice.
Every case which has been acquitted and which has been withdrawn is because the prosecution is unable to define what KRS mean, what willful mean, and what prior planning means. So most of high-profile cases where money has been lost, huge amount of money has been lost, have been acquitted, have been withdrawn because the prosecution was unable to clearly define what KRS means, willingly means, and prior planning means. Therefore, we are supposed to cure that tumor, which is within these four pieces of law.
By doing what?
By deleting that section. That is what I'm proposing.
So instead of enhancing the law, you delete it? Yeah,
so that, you know, law is just like, you know, we are talking about criminal law. Anybody who is prosecuted with a criminal case, the law must be precise. The law must be clear. So it should not be fake law.
So if you're saying...
You have to be able to be put in the scene of crime.
So you're saying willful, careless, and what other word are not defined?
Prior planning. They are not defined.
Prior planning.
Yes.
So instead of defining them, you want to delete them?
Yeah, that is what I'm proposing. I'm proposing to delete them. Okay. Number two, Sam, that piece of law has been used by political system in the past to witch hunt many professionals. Many professionals of their careers have been killed because someone out there wants to witch hunt, and it can be easily used by anybody to go out there and have allegation that so-and-so did not have prior planning, did not perform this function of procurement in a careless way. What is careless to me is not careless to the other person. So we need to be precise. Law should not be fake. This is a fake law which has ensured that a huge amount of money has been lost from taxpayers' resources.
So whose interest are you protecting?
I'm protecting Kenyans' interest. Money should not be lost. Money should not be lost. And anybody caught in corruption should be prosecuted. People should not be walking scot-free in the streets of Nairobi or wherever in the Republic of Kenya when they have stolen public resources. And you steal public resources, you are taken to court, prosecution is not able to prove what KRS mean, what prior planning mean, what willful mean. Then you walk scot-free. How many people golden bag? Do we have anything up to today? Triton. Okay. Do we have anything up to today? This other scam which was there. What do you call it? The Morongaro one. During Kepake's Anglo Leasing. Do we have anybody prosecuted up to today? Nobody. Where did all these resources?
I hear you.
The Kenya pipeline case. Kenya pipeline case. Just the 2020. Do you have anybody prosecuted up to today?
To have a bite. So, Fred, what are your thoughts about? Because he says that because of that lack of clarity, it should be scrapped.
You know, you have asked Honorable Roku a very simple question. what is he trying to cure? He has said, in his view, he's trying to define certain words that appear in those acts. But to me, I think Honorable Ruku was a member of parliament and a politician for that matter. Maybe whatever he's trying to do is just trying to be present. But because whatever he's trying to do is in the conduct of a state officer. The Constitution of Kenya in Article 75 actually provides how a public officer or a state officer should behave to avoid any conflict, whether in private or in public, as far as that is concerned. Number two, what we need to do, we need to enhance our laws. And I'll give him an example. In enhancing, let's start from Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Act of 2011. What we need to enhance is the qualification of those we appoint into those offices. For example, the chairperson or the CEO. And remember, in the committee report, it proposed that in enhancing that, maybe now we need to put people in those offices as the chair that is qualified to be a judge of High Court. That is enhancing the qualification. Number two, look at the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of, is it of 2003? If you look at that again, the enhancement would be such that the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary should now be able to publish all those convicted of corruption, bribery, and other economic crimes, so that people can know that this issue of corruption, because the issue here, Honorable Ruku, is corruption. Corruption has made this country to lose money, to waste money, to even kill, to make people die as a result of stolen money meant for hospitals, for roads, and so on. So for me, in enhancing this law, there are so many laws, some that fight corruption, so many of them. But if you want to delete provisions of an act that were clear, as in my view they are clear, and then now you want to make it look like you are trying to protect the state officers in their duty so that you make them look like they were being targeted while they are not, I think in my personal view that's not right. Again, in all these things, doing checks and balances, what we have to do is how are we protecting the public funds, right from the time of appropriation all the way to implementation of the budget. The Controller of Budget gives report every 4 months. The Auditor General gives reports after every 6 months. But if you look at the recommendations, members of parliament look at those, then there's a recommendation at the bottom of that report. How do we use those recommendations, even in court, so that we follow through money that has been wasted, money that has been stolen? That is the most important thing. In my view, Honorable Ruku, and with all due respect, because you see, some of these institutions that are also be relying on these laws have written to Parliament, and they're saying, no, in our view, this is going to derail our work, it's going to derail the gains that we have made. I think just alone, I think it is important that now, as a member of parliament, maybe try look at how do we make good use of the Auditor General report and Controller of Budget reports. But most importantly, what happens to those who have been found to have stolen funds? These monies, have they ever been refunded? Is there any make good? The law again tells us that those monies, there must be make good. In my view, as a member of Parliament, Ruku, you should have looked at how do we recover stolen loot instead of going into the law and deleting, proposing for deletion of words that are simple English and understandable to any judge or any lawyer.
Okay, all right. What are your thoughts, Honorable Koech? I know you'll have your time to debate the bill and even make a decision on it. But when the agencies, that is ODPP, the Attorney General, the SEC, write and oppose it, because, for instance, the Attorney General says that it is not in line with our anti-corruption policy framework and international obligations that call for strengthening of the legal framework for combating corruption. Of course, is because the amendments appear to remove procurement fraud and malpractices from the ambit of corruption and economic crimes. What would be your take, and what should be our priority when it comes to looking at the laws on against corruption?
First, let me congratulate Honorable Ruku for introducing that amendment. It creates debate on that bit of law, which is very important, especially in the legislative process. And as a member of parliament, I think he's at liberty to introduce any amendment to any section of the law that he feels that it offends certain principles of justice. But I've not socialized with the bill. But listening to Honorable Ruku, I'm lost, because Honorable Ruku seems to be saying that this bill is actually intended to make sure that prosecution is able to succeed, if I understood him well, and saying that look at the cases like Triton and Goldenberg, for instance, that have taken so long. But in my view, it is nothing to do with the investigative agencies. It's everything to do with evidence that he provided in court. So what I will probably want to understand is that is Honorable Ruku trying to introduce different mechanisms in this amendment that will be able to make sure that even collection of evidence then becomes a bit watertight by the time it is taken to court? Because a judge looks at what is being brought before them before they can make that decision on whether to pass judgment of confirmation of an offense or not. So listening to it, there are so many areas that probably we will have to go and discuss in Parliament to get sure that it comes out as a better bill. And even listening to Wakili Fred here, he seems to also say that it's just deleting it, he's just removing some English words and still having not injected anything in that amendment. So we will go and socialize with it and see which areas are going to be improved, or if it is even necessary to introduce it in the first place. Because to be very honest, what we are lacking in Kenya today is not law that should be used to prosecute. It is, especially when you look at high-profile cases, the biggest problem has been interference and lack of collection of evidence. Look at what happened before. You've seen in this country where cases, people used to be prosecuted, taken to court so fast that evidence is not collected. Because of political reasons, sometimes you end up in court with zero evidence. Of course, a judge will not rely on what has happened, but the cases are hyped up and you're thrown into court. The next day, we used to call it Kamata Friday. Abuse of court process, abuse of abuse of independent institutions. So you find that cases are rushed in court and you expect that there will be fair judgment. So in my view, we will still sit and look at it in Parliament and see what should be added, or if it is necessary for that matter.
So I hear you when you say that it is not the challenges of law, but actually the implementation of it. And for instance, what he's seeking to delete includes the question on prior planning. Just the other day, the Auditor General gave a report and said that there are several stadia, talking about Wanguru, there's Kirigiti, there's one in Kisumu, and another one that were constructed or refurbished without proper planning, that the budgets were actually inflated, and that Kenyans didn't get value for money. So, for instance, what should Parliament do with such a report?
Let me tell you, there are many ways of dealing with it. For instance, even before I come to your question, do you know in Germany, for instance, if you're supposed to do a road of 10 kilometers tarmac, what should always happen is the public should know that this is the estimate from the engineers, from the agency that is advertising for that job. It should be made public. Do you know in Kenya everyone is kept in dark? So that no one knows. If we were to put up a building like where we are now, no one is given the cost, no one knows how much it should be. It is a secret between the people who are supposed to execute it and whoever is going to bid for it. So that by the time we are going for tender, the figures are not clear. So you can always place with those numbers. But we should make it very clear that if we are going to build your headquarters, this is the cost, and it should be put in the newspaper alongside the advert so that it makes it easy for people to understand that no one should pass certain figure. That is the problem.
Why is that continuing, even in the current administration?
There hasn't been proper legislation on procurement to make sure that is taken care of. And that is why
That's true.
that is why that procurement is always a moving target in Kenya. There is no constant figure. Everyone can justify a figure. That is why this building today, if the engineer estimate was going to be probably 1 billion, you'll find someone quoting 3 billion, and it is okay. And they can justify it. They can say, oh, you know, when the engineer was probably doing their BQs, there are elements that they omitted. And that is the contractor saying. So to make sure that that is curtailed, it must be made public that this building is going to be built at the cost of 1 billion.
That's what I'm asking.
All the bidders can come out now.
How come today, in the current administration, there are contracts that are being entered into and they're not being communicated?
No, it's not. It's not. There are different contracts also that we must agree with. There are PPPs. There are those ones that investors are going to inject equity and develop the projects. Those ones are different because they can justify that this is a loan. And that one is evaluated by a serious team in Treasury alongside
But it's also supposed
the
to be
agency.
communicated, isn't it?
It should be communicated.
Let me give you an example. Just the other day, the president launched the Talanta Sports City and said that the contractor is the CRBC. The KDF is going to supervise, and he'll also be coming to supervise every 3 months. I think that's what he said. The PS Sports went to the sports committee at the National Assembly and was asked the question, how much is it going to cost? He didn't have a figure. He even said, allow me time to consult with defense and come back with a written statement.
It looks like it's
How can we get into a venture that you don't even know the cost?
It looks like then it is a multi-agency team that is working together, and probably figures were with different people.
The sports cabinet secretary is the user agency.
That's worrying. So it should be, but actually that parliament should have given him days and told him, report in 7 days to parliament exactly what the figures are. It is wrong. There has to be a figure so that even Kenyans know that this is a value for money or it is not value for money. It cannot just be a moving target that, we don't have a standard figure.
If you remove the term that he wants to remove about prior planning, in fact, there's not Talanta City Sports Stadium in the current budget. But already groundbreaking has happened.
So Sam, we need to ask ourselves, prior planning, is it a function of procurement? Is it a function of board? The board of the institution?
What do you understand with prior planning itself?
According to Mwongozo, every institution, public institution run the guidance, they get guidance from Mwongozo. Planning is a function of the board. So in case there's no proper planning, who should be taken to court? Is it the procurement manager or is it the board? These are the questions which we need to ask ourselves. This law has been used to massacre small people.
Who signs off a project? Is it the board? Is it the procurement manager?
Planning is a function of a board, of an institution. I have been a member of a board of a public institution.
Who signs off a project?
Board comes up with yearly plan, which are executed by the senior management of that institution, led by the CEO. So if there is no planning, proper planning, who should we blame? Number two, in case of emergency.
Don't move so fast, Honorable Ruku, because you are saying the planning is done by the board and executed by...
That's a function of board.
The secretariat led by the CEO. So I'm asking, if there's no planning, then it means the board didn't plan, isn't it?
Exactly.
So who signs off a project to an extent that it's costing the public resources?
Some. All the functions, all the project implemented by our institutions, public institutions, the people who should carry the burden is the board. Okay? Now the question should be, why do you want to massacre small people? Because of the very failure of other people who are not taken to court. We need to have a proper piece of law which is tackling corruption in the Republic of Kenya in a most appropriate way.
Let's be specific.
The current act of 2003 is not well targeted as far as fighting corruption in this country is concerned. And that's why we keep on saying corruption is there in the Republic of Kenya and there's nothing which is being done.
Let's be specific.
Let me make my point, Sam.
You will. Let's be specific on this, because you're saying that it is the work of the board to plan.
Yes, according to Mwongozo.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have a project that is not the product of planning, meaning the board did not plan, but money was spent. signed off by someone.
Any piece
Should
of law,
the board still take responsibility, yet they didn't plan for it?
any piece of law, some starts with a preamble. And that preamble comes with the definitions. So we should be able to define key terms which have serious consequences as far as that piece of law is concerned. One of the terms which is not defined in Anti-Corruption and Economic Act of 2003 is prior planning. It is not defined. Therefore, it is me or Sam to determine what prior planning means.
If you have a law with 100 sections and each law is using an English term, it is also supposed to be in the definition of terms. Is it section 2?
We are lawmakers, myself and Koech. He will tell you that any piece of law, at the first page of the law, start with the definitions of key terms.
And if I'm not mistaken, that
key
is
terms which have serious consequences. One of the terms with serious consequences, which can take someone to jail for years, is prior planning. A term which can take someone to jail for years should have a definition.
Okay.
That definition is not there.
All right. There's a question that
term,
I've not answered. I've posted 3 times, you've not answered, so I bet you don't have the answer.
Which one is that?
As to the question, if the board has not planned and there is execution and public resources are spent.
I'm answering by telling you, Sam, you want me to answer a question which has no basis in terms of we are talking about law, piece of law. We start with definition. If there is definition of what prior planning is, your question will be valid.
So you told me that planning is done by the board, isn't it?
Yes, it's done by the board.
So the board.
But here we are discussing about a law, a piece of law which has massacred so many professionals.
So let me ask you, the question I was posing to Honorable Koech about Talanta Sports City, and I'm not saying there's any corruption there, but there is a report by the Auditor General that says that for Stadia, actually there's more expenditure that was effected without any basis. There was direct procurement that was not justified. This time round, there's a firm that has been hired to construct the Talanta Sports City, and the KDF is going to supervise. So if along the way something happens and things are wrong, things go wrong, who should be asked questions?
If you look at the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, it clearly stipulates how such kind of irregularity should be handled. If you go to Section 55 of Section 5 of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act prescribes on administrative actions. If you go to Section 46.5 of Public Procurement and Disposal Act, provide for internal disciplinary actions against the Evaluation Committee for any for not complying with the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. If you go to Section 53.1, provide for,
Please don't read the law here. Because you've read it, that particular question I've asked you, who should take responsibility? Because the sports PS does not know how much it's going to cost. In fact, he wants to consult with the defense and come back to Parliament.
Planning is a function of the board. Let the board...
So which board in this case?
Who is implementing that? Stadia? Is it Stadia?
I am telling you what happened.
Is it Sport Kenya? Is it Sport Kenya which is building the stadia? If it is Sport Kenya building the stadium, then let's go to the board of Sport Kenya and ask them tough questions.
So the president came out and announced construction will happen. He will supervise. KDF will also supervise. The sports PS does not know
that's why we need to amend this law, because listen, we have two issues here. President carries the executive authority of this country. He may go to a certain place and say, I have, as a president of the Republic of Kenya, I have authorized to have a road here, tarmac road. So it's upon, listen.
How can he do that?
He can do it.
How?
He carries the executive authority of the people of the Republic of Kenya. Number two, if we have a crisis, if we have an emergency, for instance, let's say we have a a conflict in Sudan where the embassy of Kenya is attacked.
You actually believe the president has that power?
President of the Republic of Kenya carries the executive authority
So he can
of
go
the
and
people
say,
of Kenya.
Like you said,
He can
this
go.
will be constructed.
He can go to any corner of this country.
So where will the resources come from?
People of that area convince him that we have a serious crisis here. We have an emergency here. We don't have a bridge.
Sorry.
Children are not able to go to school. He will authorize his minister to come up with.
Come from?
That, it is his government. His government has resources.
Okay.
It's upon
Honorable
his people in executive to know where the money is going to come
That's
from.
how things work.
So that is why, Sam, we need to amend some of these sections so that they can be properly aligned with the reality.
Remove the word prior planning.
Removing the one prior planning should have been done long time ago. Or if not removed, it should be defined in that piece of law.
You have proposed to delete it, not define.
Yes.
And I want us to take a break, but Honorable Coach, is that how things work? That the president can come out and say,
I don't want to contradict my colleague, but of course, if it is something to do with roads, there is a discretion that is given to the Minister of Roads it's called special fund, that he has a discretion of using. It's about 10% of the budget. So probably the president can write on that. But in anything that has to be done, the president has to liaise with Parliament to support his agenda. So if a road is to be constructed in Honorable Ruku's constituency, or like the one that the president was launching in my constituency on Thursday, then it must be budgeted for, and it has to start from Parliament. The Treasury will send the estimates. Parliament has to look at it, has to appropriate resources properly. It has to be debated in Parliament. It has to be passed in Parliament. So the entire process is a parliamentary process. Okay. That is entirely our job.
Sam, just to add on what Honorable Kacha said, what Ruku is forgetting, we have what is called the principles of executive authority. That principle is what he has explained. It means that it must be exercised in a certain manner that is compatible with the Constitution. And then in exercising it also, it must be to the benefit of the people. It also must be to serve the people. And in serving the people, you have to go back to Parliament and look at the instruments available in executing that authority. So Ruku, for example, President Ruto cannot wake up this morning and say he doesn't want to see this building here and it will be put down. It's not possible, even though he has that authority. But he must follow through the principles.
Okay. All right. We need to take a break here. When we come back, we will speak about other matters. Stay tuned.